Everyone has signed in for the meeting in the back entrance of the room. If you have not, please do so, so it must be on the record. I'm Robert Tanner. The other board members are Scott Calhoun and John DePlacido. I'd like to introduce the following members. Matt Puz, Zoning and Development Officer. Julie Maggio, Assistant Zoning and Development Officer. Denise Pizarro, Zoning and Development Secretary. Jeremy Toman, Board Solicitor. And Cecilia Mahana, Court Reporter. After the presentation by the appellant, the board will hear from those in question of the appeal, those in favor and those opposed. Any documents or evidence that is presented must be kept for a period of 60 days for our records. And after all the presentations are made, the board will recess. We'll then reconvene and make our decisions. We have up to 45 days to render a decision, but they're usually made this evening. If you do not care to wait for the decision, you may call the zoning office in the morning after 8:30 a.m. I'd now ask that everyone please stand to be sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please answer, I do. I do. Thank you. Okay, appeal number 22-12, KDP East Liberty LLC for vacant property located between West Ridge Road and Wegmans Drive. Anyone to speak on that? Yeah, the podium, please. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Tyson Miller. I'm with KU Resources. Our address is 22 South Linden Street, Duquesne, Pennsylvania, 15110. And I'm the civil engineer representing the applicant in this matter. And I apologize, I did not get the memo for last month's meeting, so got it this month. So I would like to make an amendment to our request. After speaking with Starbucks Corporate, they would like to amend the request for the height variance from 17 feet to 25 feet. So happy to go through the documents, the site plan, the justification. Well, two things. So the other variance application was for a second sign, which would be a smaller monument sign on Wegmans Drive. The height variance, excuse me, would be for a pylon sign that is adjacent to West Ridge. The justification for the
Can I stop you
Sure.
for just 1 second? Matt, is there a problem that we have advertised for 17.4 and they're now asking for 25?
The ad was written as such. Let me find it here. Asking for a variance to construct a second freestanding sign and a height variance to construct the sign higher than permitted in the MU2 corridor mixed-use district. So it did not specify in the legal ad what the height request was.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we don't have an issue
Thank
there.
you for clarifying.
So now you realize you're asking for a 10-foot variance now, right?
That's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'll start with the monument sign first. So if you're familiar with this parcel, which is adjacent to the existing PNC Bank across the street from the Wegmans, it does sit quite a bit lower, and I'll get into that in a moment, than West Ridge Drive. So similar to PNC Bank, pretty much identical in terms of the arrangement of the signage. There would be a pylon sign along West Ridge, and then as you turn on to Wegmans Drive, there would be a smaller monument sign right at the entrance. We had discussed the possibility of classifying that sign as a directional sign, but just based on the size of it and the fact that we were requesting a variance for the height, it was determined that it made sense to formally request a variance for the second sign. But it's my understanding that even though I know the PNC Bank was maybe built around 2006, that it did not need the variance for the second sign at the time. So again, similarly, it's in context with the other uses in that area. Wegmans also has multiple signs as well. They have a sign out on Ridge as well as a second sign at their entrance into their facility. For the pylon sign on Ridge, the justification is, again, if you're familiar with the site, The finished floor, our proposed finished floor elevation for the building is approximately 741 and change. The roadway elevation along Ridge Avenue right in front of the parcel is approximately 764. So it's approximately 23-foot vertical difference from West Ridge Avenue to the, the finished floor elevation of the facility. So they're requesting the higher signage to allow drivers enough time to make the turn in, because they wouldn't be able to, you're really not going to be able to see the building much from Westwood Drive compared to some of the other, commercial businesses along this corridor. So it's just the fact that those particular parcels, have an existing topographical challenge that, prevents good visibility for those two. We're only asking for the signage for the Starbucks parcel now. There is a subdivision, to create a second commercial property. Anything that happens with the signage for that would be a separate application, and, so we're only talking about specifically the signage for the Starbucks this evening. And Starbucks has, as I'm sure you're aware of, many national retailers have a sign package that they like to see as their typical branding that's associated with their product. And that was the reasoning for this late request to raise that, as they have a set standard that they would like to achieve if possible. I'll note that while they might be in different zoning districts, there are certainly multiple signs along the West Ridge Drive corridor that are higher than 20 feet, particularly the Sheets, the Lowe's, some of the square, small shopping plazas. So, within a half a mile of the proposed Starbucks facility, there are numerous signs that exceed the 15 feet. I understand they may have been grandfathered in based on the age of them, but at least in terms of contextual height, it's not necessarily out of character for this stretch of the corridor. And certainly as you get closer to 79, you have much larger, much higher signs.
So I guess the one question I have for you is, I find the pylon in the last, and I didn't think I had it, I went through it twice. The pylon's the very last sheet, so I see that where it was a 17-foot 4 pylon, but what I can't find on a site plan is where this would go. Is it,
Sure.
Am I correct? If you could come up here for a moment on this page here so we can all look at this. Is this where it goes?
Yes. So to orient it this way so that it matches that. So again,
Actually,
so
you
I
had
have
it
the other way around. So yeah, Westwood Road, Wegmans Drive, here's the driveway of the proposed facility. So yes, it's basically right in the middle of the parcel. So that location J on that sheet is the location of the sign,
Okay,
of the pylon sign.
okay. Thanks, if I could have you go back to the
Yeah.
podium.
Are you clear on that? Yeah, so it's on that. This is the land development plan that was submitted as part of the planning and zoning process. So,
The one thing I didn't see are the elevations
the elevations of
The last page.
Yes, if you're looking at
of the sign itself, with the location of the sign on the property. How high above the road, how high above the sidewalk?
If I could have you go back.
Sure.
So we can read.
So that elevation that I had mentioned earlier, approximately 764 is the road elevation. There is a slight grade on the road, but it's fairly flat. So the approximate elevation there is plus or minus 764, so it would be relative to that height. So the sidewalk there and the roadway are, at the same elevation around that 764, and then it's the property down below that's at 741.
So you said there's a 23-foot difference between the
Between
store
the sidewalk,
and the sidewalk?
yes,
Same as the road?
correct,
plus or minus.
essentially,
So this sign is going to be, you want 25 feet now?
correct.
So is it the top of the sign that's going to be 2 foot higher than the sidewalk?
No,
how much of
the well, again, there's sidewalk on both West Ridge and Wegmans. So the elevation I'm giving you is the elevation along West Ridge Drive, which was where the sign will be.
When the sign is completed, the bottom of the sign that you can see, not the poster, the drive-through portion of that big sign, how high is that above or below West Ridge Road?
Just give me,
That whole thing is, you want 25 feet.
correct.
Okay, so what is the bottom of the drive-through elevation compared to the roadway?
Give me 1 second. It'll be approximately 20 feet from the bottom of the drive-through sign to the existing grade.
Because the hardship you're stating is that the site sits below the road, but you're saying the pylon base is near the road level. The
No.
base, the concrete footing
The concrete,
is near the height of West Ridge Road.
the pylon sign will basically be flush mounted next to the sidewalk that's on West Ridge Road. So it will, the bottom of that sign, it's just a metal post, it's not gonna have, any other embellishments. That would be at that approximate 764 elevation. And then the total height of this signage itself is a little over 5'7" So if the top of the sign's 25 feet, the bottom of that drive-through sign would be approximately.
Picture is worth 1,000
Sure.
words, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the roadway. Okay, and here's the sidewalk, and then you go down here. You're putting that, or asking to put that sign here, more or less? If this is West Ridge Road?
Correct.
And this is the store?
Correct.
You want, so essentially from the sidewalk up 25 feet?
Correct, yes. So similar to the location of similar to the location of the PNC Bank sign, pylon sign, which is right next to the sidewalk that's parallel to West Ridge.
So you're gonna build some sort of monument off to, like they did, right? Off to the side of the sidewalk on your property?
Well, they had landscaping at the bottom, they have landscaping at the bottom of their sign, so they build a retaining wall, basically to beautify that sign.
But in plan, that's where your sign would go, only it's gonna be 25 foot high.
Correct.
How
Correct.
high is PNC's, do you know?
I believe PNC's is right around 15 feet. I tried to measure it earlier, but it was a little windy.
Okay, so you're looking for
It would be
10
higher
feet
than,
more, and it'll be east of
Correct.
their sign,
it will be east of their sign, correct?
on the other side of the trees likely.
Yes.
Okay.
So there, in addition to the vertical elevation difference, there is significant vegetation that also is will obscure the store from the roadway. So again, that's also a reason for the justification for the higher signage to allow drivers enough time to be able to turn it into the site.
So that's the reason you want an extra 10 feet?
Correct. Yeah. It's just because, typically if, to draw the analogy of this building is right at grade. You can see this building from the road. You're going to have a very difficult time seeing the actual building from West Ridge Drive. And therefore, they're seeking the additional height to allow that visibility to be enhanced.
You might have to look up.
I'm sorry I was late.
Sure.
So with the signage proposed, are you the architect?
I'm the civil engineer.
Civil engineer, okay. So in terms of, I guess with Starbucks, do they find that, I guess depending on the location, is signage like this a necessity? Because you're not really, I can understand if you were to put signage off of Peach Street, which is our main, I'm not sure if you're from here, but it's our main commercial thoroughfare off of the highway. So you have a lot of people coming off the highway who may not know the area, and they need to have signage, very, very good signage so that people come to their establishment. But this is in a location where most of the time, these are people that are gonna be from the local area. Plus, doesn't it seem like most people know where Starbucks is located also? I guess, what is the argument that you need such a large sign on a, not such a, I mean, it is, 26th Street is, there is a connector and thoroughfare through to the I guess to the highway, but I mean, not exactly. It's a west-east, east-west thoroughfare in our area.
So I don't have the traffic data to tell you what the number of trips that would be pass-by trips as opposed to direct trips. And by that, I mean, the difference between those is that when you have a direct trip, you're leaving your house and you're going to Wegmans. You're leaving your house, you're going to Starbucks. You're leaving your house, you're going to the bank. The pass-by trips are people that see the sign and say, oh, I want a coffee, or oh, I want a cake pop. Right, so there definitely is a percentage of their sales that is that is pass-by traffic compared to, say, PNC Bank, where people, you know, a person from out of town that's driving by isn't gonna say, oh, I want to stop at PNC Bank. So I'll be honest, I don't have the breakdown of figures. I certainly could provide those to you. That would vary by location, and we weren't required to provide a traffic study here, so I just don't have the actual figures for this data, or excuse me, for this location.
But typically, like, you know, establishments co-locate, right? They know that they're going to capture their most of their customers because they might be going to one establishment like Wegmans, and they want to get a Starbucks after they go shopping. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to fish for some kind of argument that they need such large signage, just again to clutter up our streets, you know. I mean, that's what I'm fishing for
yeah, I
from
understand
you.
the
And
question.
I understand you're the civil engineer, and
Yeah,
you might not have that data.
I understand the question, and I said, basically, if it were, if the site were at level grade with the road, I would agree with you that the necessity would be much lower. Here, again, I think that there is some justification to allow people enough time to turn into the site, you know, particularly coming from the easterly direction. But the simple answer is that basically national retailers have a certain branding, and that's what they're seeking to achieve here. So, you know, to your question, do they make changes? Certainly they do. But you know, this is what they're asking for. But it's certainly up to the board to determine which way they want to go, and or ask, you know, or put a restriction on it if you don't want to go that tall. But this is their branding. This is what this is basically what they're asking for this type of location. You know, it is a busy street, so there is a lot of traffic here. So I recognize that most of the people that are going to be going here will live in the neighborhood, but you are going to have a lot of pass-by
Can
traffic.
you expand on that, why they only asked for 17-foot versus 25-foot this month?
That's what I was wondering, what changed in
Yep.
the branding in the last month?
Well, I'll be honest, that appears to have just been a miscommunication on my team's end, that they wanted to seek the 25-foot the whole time. I'll be honest, I don't have a great answer for you for that. It was just an error on my part that they did in fact want the 25-foot the entire time.
Because they obviously spent a lot of money on drawings from the sign company for their standard
Yes.
national brand at 17'4".
Well, they
So
have,
it's-
yes.
It's not something that was just requested in writing, you know, I mean, this was
well-
something that was on a plan that we've had, well, the plan's dated May 31st. It looks like, you know, it says standard sign package.
So honestly, that was something that we modified based on some correspondence that we had modified in error. So the sign package actually came through, had 25 feet, and again, there was just a miscommunication on our end, and we changed the elevation to 17. So that's purely,
Okay.
that was purely a miscommunication on my part.
Can I, go ahead, did you have something?
Go ahead first.
Is this the first Starbucks that your company has done, or have you done others?
This is we have one that's nearly complete, and we have two others that are
But you've worked with
entitled.
other national chains like
Sure.
these? Okay, so, and you know then that they certainly are, if they're in urban areas, they are accommodating to the design regulations and the zoning codes of different cities. And they have made accommodations to fit better design standards. And now they're coming into a suburban area and demanding a much higher signage feet. And so, I mean, I guess I'm just stating something that I'm, you know, that they do make adjustments. They will make adjustments, so, like you said.
Yes, that's correct. And certainly that's up to the board to decide what they think is appropriate, but this is basically the standard ask, and then we kind of work from there, so to speak. So this would certainly be their preference, but they recognize that it's up to the board to decide what's the best character for the neighborhood.
Sure.
Thank you.
And, you know, I will state that we are not asking for a size variance, but typically they would have a larger size sign as well. So we were at least trying to avoid asking for that relief and just focus on the height.
Thank you.
And I guess my last question is, if this variance were not granted, what would you do?
Well, I guess that's a good question. So the options, I assume, would be to apply potentially at a lower height or provide a sign package that doesn't need any variances. So again, to Ms. Spry's point, you know, certainly national retailers have a package that they like to see, and they have standard sign sizes that they want to see. Do they go down to smaller sizes? They can. Obviously, that becomes a custom order. You know, there's cost and time that goes into that, as opposed to having it on the shelf or having a sign drawings for the manufacturer. But certainly they do it. So I don't know the actual procedures here as to, you know, whether or not you would just dictate a different sign height here, whether we would have to come back. I don't know if Mr. Puzz knows the answer to that, if, you know, if they would be able to request an additional variance at a lower height. I'm not entirely sure. I've seen it go multiple different ways on that, but so I'm not sure. I don't have the best answer for you on what that is.
Okay.
We would have to basically collectively regroup and then figure out what our options would be. It's not something I don't think that they would, you know, be appealing for, you know, filing an appeal over, right? It's something that we would just have to weigh our options and figure out through the township what might be available. You know, again, is it requesting a smaller height and coming back? Is, you know, it could go a certain number of ways.
Okay.
To your knowledge anyway, is there any negative effect to sales if the sign is one height or another?
Well, I think, I don't have any hard data for you for that, but certainly there are some people that would not see it in time and just keep on going. So yes, the short answer is the higher sign you have, the more people that are going to see it and the more business that you'll get. So just anecdotally, I can tell you that there is a ramification, but I'm not able to quantify for you what that percentage might be.
You previously mentioned that the PNC sign is approximately 15 feet.
Based on what I could tell today, yes.
And that base is approximate to or flush with the sidewalk.
Correct.
And are you able to, I guess, have a sign that's in compliance with the ordinance, or would that just not be possible for Starbucks?
I think, unfortunately, I can't speak for Starbucks to say whether or not that would not be possible at all. I think there are options to go small, you know, slightly shorter, but I think that their minimum standard was that 17'4", which is why I had included that erroneously previously. So I can't say that they haven't built signs shorter than that other places. Certainly in, you know, obviously in downtown urban locations, they don't have any pylon signage at all, right? So, but in this type location, I think that they're looking at a minimum of 17, but an ideal height of 25.
So a minimum of 17, and then, but the standard ask and
Yes.
the ask that you're making in this application is for 25.
That's correct.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions?
And again, I don't know if you have any questions on the second sign, but again, that's really just in the same character as the rest of the shops in the plaza, just to provide additional identification at the entrance to the driveway.
And to be clear, that variance request is just for that additional sign
Just for the fact that it's a
Second
second ground-mounted sign, yes.
on the parcel, right?
Correct, correct.
And you have no authority at this point in time, I mean, your only authority is based on the 25 feet?
Correct. If you would allow me to deliberate and call, I can certainly make a phone call, and as some boards allow and some do not. So I don't want to commit to being able to say that I would have further authority, but as of right now, yes, that's the request.
Well, at this juncture, you've had 2 meetings to get that information over to us. So, at this point, we can make a decision on the application and on the authority that you have. We don't really have much authority beyond that, at this juncture. So unless you have that authority, then I don't know if we can necessarily, and I don't even know if, in the end, if the board would even be amenable to granting the variance. So, we have the application in front of us, that's what we have. We have your authority at 25 based on the amendment that you made at the start.
Well, I think based on the testimony I provided, I think that I would be able to agree to what their minimum standard is, if of that 17.4. So, but those are really, I guess, the two options that I have available to me in terms of what I would be.
So you do have the authority at the 17.4?
Yes.
So then your application is either or.
That would be my request, yes. Well, no, I shouldn't say it that way. I say, our application is 25, but if upon consideration of the board that they feel that that's in excess of what they're willing to grant, if they would consider a lower height that still exceeds, I would respectfully request that they consider that.
Okay, I think that's all we have for you right now.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this variance request? Does the township have any? Okay. Okay, moving on to appeal number 22-14, Antonio Ferraro for property located at 5325 West 54th, asking for a variance for an in-law apartment. Excuse me one second before you get started. I want to, Matt Puzz.
Yes.
Previous ordinance, we had a list of items for the special exception for an in-law.
Yes.
Does that still?
Yes, we do still have the criteria for a special exception to be granted for an in-law apartment.
Well, it's right there.
Section 145-58.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, you can go ahead and present. No, go ahead and speak from the podium. Oh, you have something for us? Sure. It's fine. Thank you.
My name is Antonio Ferraro. I live at 5325 West 54th Street. And at this time, I respectfully request consideration from the board for an in-law suite above the garage. If you look at the photographs that I submitted, you can see the front of the house is the first photograph. Off to the right is the garage. Then there's a close-up of the garage, and then a photograph from the backyard. And what I'm requesting is living space for my son and his wife. We're requesting a 26 by 34 addition, which is going to extend 10 feet to the right of the garage for a carport underneath. Now, that would be 884 square feet, which would be 164 square feet over the 720. Again, it would be in the short term for my son and his wife to live there for a short period of time until they can gather up enough money to buy a house of their own. It is not a rent situation. There's not going to be any rent being paid. There's no separate utilities. Everything is going to be coming off the main house and is going to be attached to the house. So in addition to that information, I have a mother that's 84 years old. I have a mother-in-law that's 90 years old. And I know that it's just a matter of time before one of them is going to be living there. And part of the hardship for the extra space, I know it's over the 720, but it's only over by about 164 square feet, is you get into a situation where you have wheelchairs, you have walkers, you have motorized scooters. Her mother has 2 lift chairs. There's one that she keeps in the bedroom. There's one that she keeps in the living room. So I'm asking for additional space because I see in the future, whenever I have somebody elderly living there, that I'm going to need that space. In addition to that, looking even further down the road, my wife and I will probably live in that addition, and one of my children will take over the house. My wife is disabled. 11 months in the hospital, 2 bouts of cancer. We know what's in the future for her. It's going to be, again, the same thing. Wheelchairs, motorized scooters. I'm asking for the extra space to accommodate nursing, like if visiting nurses, they come in, there's medical equipment, different things like that are involved. So that's my hardship for the additional space. In the packet that I gave you, I went around to all of my neighbors, and they signed off on this, that they have no objection to this addition. And these are all of my immediate neighbors, including the one directly across the street. I also included a letter from our HOA, the second paragraph. They do not have any problems with the addition as long as the board approves it, and there's no outside entrance, which there won't be, and that it's not a rental, which it will not be. There's not going to be any rent exchanged. The construction project is being constructed by a professional builder. It's Gatesman Home Improvement. They have already met with the building inspector. They've gone over all the plans. They know what has to be done. It's going to be a sound, constructed, appealing project. I believe that it's going to enhance the property. It's going to bring out my property value. It's going to bring up the property value of everybody around me. I just don't, there's not really a negative to this project. It doesn't negatively impact public health of anybody, safety, general welfare of anyone in the community. I don't see a negative to this project. And like I said, this house is going to be in my family. My son and his wife are going to be there. Eventually, my mother or mother-in-law, and then my wife and I. And again, for medical reasons, I'm asking for the additional space. Just want to make sure.
Do you mind clarifying for us, you had said that there's 10 additional feet Is that right? That's going to be over the garage? That will
Yes.
be a carport
To the west,
to the west? That-
right. So
Is that included in your square footage, or is that not included in the square footage?
that's included. That would be the 884. So the addition would be above the garage, and it would extend 10 feet to the west, just on the top half. And then the bottom half would just be a covered area to park a car.
And this is more of a question for Matt. Isn't that considered two different uses? One is an in-law apartment, and then you have an attached structure, or am I wrong?
Well, per the ordinance, the only thing we're looking at is the size of the in-law apartment.
Okay.
So if the area underneath the, I guess the carport, that would be excluded because that's almost like a parking area.
Right.
But that's
so-
only if it's included in the calculation of the 884.
So it's not included, the
That, it
carport?
should not be.
No.
Okay, you did the,
Yeah, the 884 is just the living space above.
okay.
Correct. And that includes storage, and
Sure.
includes a laundry.
It says garage below.
And it's
I'm-
actual living space that's overhanging,
oh,
This is the three,
in essence being
10-foot
the carport.
parker's corner.
Yeah, right. I don't know why I'm getting hung up with this dotted line here that says garage below. That's why I was thinking that.
The garage below the line coming this way. This is
all the-
garage,
This is,
this overhangs.
yeah,
This is,
Sorry.
that seems like a lot. I don't know why. I know it's not to, well, it is to scale, isn't it?
I don't believe that's a scale
No,
diagram.
okay.
What is the square footage of your home?
Approximately 2,500 square feet.
About 2,500
So
square feet?
it's the 40%, it's the 720 as opposed to the 40%.
Right, you're on the lesser of, yeah.
Yes.
Because it says in here, it's 720 or 40%,
Mhm.
whichever is less, but,
I think it's 1,800 square feet is the break even, so you're in excess, yeah.
but I guess my point is it's, for our point of view and the way I look at it, it is more in scale with the home. It's not, you're building an in-law suite that's the same size as the home.
Correct.
You're well within your 40% is my question.
Yes, sir.
And so everyone else who is written on here, these are, so I can understand, it says you're on 54th Street. Are these all adjacent neighbors? I see Ferndale, oh, 54th is the one right next door,
Astronaut.
and then Astronaut's right here. So it's every adjacent neighbor you had sign
You
on?
were standing in my front yard. The house directly to my right is actually a Ferndale address. Then directly across the street is the Astronaut address. And to my left is the 54th. And then there's another one on Burns. The name is Burns. He could see my house from where he is, so I
I see
wanted to
it.
get him to sign it as well.
Okay.
There were no objections there.
this signature page seems to indicate that they signed off on 720 square feet.
Well,
not
that
800.
says excess of 720 square feet. I
Asking
believe.
for a variance, I think, over 7. Okay.
I mean, I realize that you are tasked with making decisions in the best interest of the township. And when you look at the proposed project, I just don't see a negative impact to the township. I mean, I think it's gonna bring everything up. The high tide brings up all the boats. I just don't see it's not gonna hurt anybody. I could see if I had a neighbor that said, oh, I don't wanna look at that, but they all looked at the letter, they all signed off on it.
And just so that the board is aware, there's two things going on here. There's the special exception, which the applicant has to meet all the requirements for special exception. And so we should quickly just run through those as a matter of course. So the first point being that it meets all the elements of the terms definition, in-law apartment that is, and that in-law apartment is defined as a separate living space within a single-family dwelling detached consisting of separate sleeping, cooking, and bathroom facilities, in which is to be occupied by any in-law or in-laws or a member of the family unit occupying the main portion of the building. And so you've confirmed previously that that's what's gonna occur and all
Yes.
future uses is gonna be.
Correct.
Okay. The second point is the square footage requirement. And so, given the fact that this is, I believe, a 2,500 square foot property or principal dwelling, that the in-law apartment shall not exceed 720 square feet. So and that's the second part of what the applicant is requesting, is the variance from that requirement. So that one, that right now as it stands, there's the 720 feet maximum square footage for the in-law apartment, and the applicant is requesting a variance to that. Now, I did note that in your application itself, you did mention that there was basically two different options. There was a 702 square foot or an 884 square foot. So what about that 702 square foot? Can you explain on that?
The reason that I put that in there is if the board was gonna deny me the 884, I don't wanna not move forward with the project because I have people depending on me to get this done so that they can live there. I request the 884, but if it's gonna be denied, I mean, if the board saw that it was fit to only approve it for the lower than the 720, I wouldn't like not move forward with the project. That's not what I mean, that's not, just for the medical equipment alone, I would like the additional extra space because I know what's gonna be happening up there. And 720 square feet, when you're dealing with lift chairs and wheelchairs and rollators and whatever else equipment needs to be in there, that is just not a lot of space. It's just not.
Okay, so that's the second.
To clarify, I think he's asking that we at least
Right.
grant the special
Well,
exception
yeah, and I
request.
think, exactly. Yeah, so we're still gonna go through the analysis of the special exception with that understanding in mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Were you asking why he put 702 and not 720?
No, he had both on the application.
Oh,
I'm assuming
But it's
702
720.
goes to the edge of the garage is why.
702 would hang over 3 feet.
oh.
That would be 26 by 27.
But you're allowed to have 720.
It's just what works for his
squaring it up.
property.
Okay, sorry.
Squaring it up,
Yeah.
there's no way to get
There's
to
no
the
way to
exact.
get 720
To get-
exactly,
okay, I
so it would end
understand.
up being 702, which would be even, that's okay, it'd be even less. I mean, I think it would look way better 10 feet with a car underneath for, the carport than just having it hang over 3 feet and have the pillars. And again, the extra space up there, you can never have too much space. And I don't think it would look bad. I think it would look better.
Okay.
And so going through the other requirements, only one in-law apartment is allowed within any single-family dwelling detached. So I'm assuming that there's no other in-law apartment on this premises.
That's correct.
No more than 2 bedrooms shall be permitted. And based on the drawing that you provided, it only appears that there's 1 bedroom.
Just one, yes.
That any addition or modification to the principal dwelling to accommodate an in-law apartment shall be architecturally integrated, and so you've already confirmed that that's going to be integrated, it's going to be part of the principal unit. All the utilities are going to be connected through.
Right.
Access, where is the access going to be? Is that going to be through?
Right through as you leave the kitchen exit, you would go right up the stairs and into the addition.
Okay. And then obviously, the requirements for the construction have to meet all the Pennsylvania construction codes, so that's something that, you're gonna handle with your contractor. And then the occupancy of rental of the in-law apartment by persons other than in-laws as defined in this chapter is expressly prohibited, and so you've already confirmed that that's not occurring. so-
Correct.
Okay.
You guys have anything? Okay, I think that's all we have for you for right now.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak on this? Okay, thanks. We're going to take a recess and discuss, and we'll be back shortly.
lost half our group. I don't know. We took a detour. Here they come.
Okay, let the record show that we reconvened at 7:57. Do I have a motion for appeal number 22-12?
I will make a motion that we grant the variance to construct a second freestanding sign. However, the height variance construction has been denied.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
So moved. Appeal number 22-14. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I will, well, there's two motions. First, I'll make a motion to deny the variance request of 720 make a motion to deny the variance request for the
884.
884 square feet of living space.
Do I have a second? Aye. All in favor of denying?
Aye.
Aye.
And the second motion, I make motion to approve the special exception of an in-law suite to meet all the requirements, including the in-law apartment to not exceed the 720 square feet or 40% of the principal dwelling's total area,
Whichever's less.
whichever is less.
Do I have a second on that?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a
Motion.
motion.
I'll second. So moved.